Hello everybody, you're very welcome to this Higher English and Maths Information Evening. I'm Mark Rooney, I am Faculty Leader of English, Media and Literacy at Bryce High School.
And I'm Leanne Simpson, I'm the Faculty Head for Maths here at Bryce. And before we get started on our presentation this evening, we really want to just thank you for all the effort and hard work that you put in supporting our young people over the past year in particular, but really over the past 18 months while they were preparing for National 5 or higher qualifications. And we're really delighted with the success our young people had. But that is down to the support they've had from yourselves as well.
Absolutely, I would just like to echo that, and obviously we're tremendously looking forward to the support that you're going to provide this year as well. So the main purpose of this evening is really to introduce and explain the various elements of each course. Sometimes when young people go home, they don't really fully expand on what they've been doing that day or how the course is laid out. So for both myself and Leanne, I think it's really important that you have a good overview of what's really expected throughout the year and the different pinch points throughout the year where perhaps more will be expected around prelim time or if folio work is due. So it's just to give an overview of how each subject is run and what is contained throughout the year.
We'll also look at changes that the SQA have made to the course content, and hopefully that will help you to support your young people when they are making those preparations for assessments or portfolio work as we're going throughout the year.
And lastly, we want to give really straightforward and practical advice about how you can help and support your young person to be successful this year. Just little easy tips and tricks and hints to give them a bit of advice when they come home and how to be a successful learner and ultimately be successful in higher English and maths. That's about it. We hope that you enjoy this presentation. If there's any questions, obviously feel free. We'll give you contact details at the end to ask. But sit back, relax, and enjoy the next two presentations.
Good evening again, and welcome to the maths part of the presentation this evening. I hope that you will find this useful when supporting your young people over the coming months. I'm sure that for many of you, you have been working with your young people at home over the past 2 years, more than normal with the current COVID closures that we've had. And probably at times there's been some of this going on, banging their heads against the wall, trying to understand what you're supposed to be doing and supporting them. Or a bit of screaming going on. Certainly there's been a bit of that in my house while we've been trying to work through some of the work that's come home from school. Or just really not understanding the methods that we perhaps have been using when teaching your young people. And so I really hope that this presentation will give you an idea of where to get extra support from ourselves as you need it over the years, what the young people will be facing as they hit their hires this year, and hopefully we'll give you some information that will be useful to you. So in maths we have two pathways this year. We have our traditional higher mathematics, which contains the algebra, the calculus, geometry, trigonometry, and really is required for any kind of STEM subject that your young person might be moving on to. But this year for the first time we also have the new higher applications of mathematics. And this is a very different course. It covers statistics, financial math, some mathematical modelling, and planning and decision making. So very different topics to things that we have traditionally looked at within the maths department. And that's quite exciting for us as staff to be able to give young people another option of a subject, and Miss O'Donnell and Mrs Patterson are teaching that class of around 20 young people who have opted to do that course this year. They are also leading some of the development across the authority in that subject. So quite an exciting time for us as we look at widening the options for young people. Within higher mathematics, what's changed for this year? Well, the SQA have decided that they're going to shorten the length of the papers. So paper 1, the non-calculator paper, will just be an hour and 15 minutes, and paper 2, the calculator paper, will be an hour and 30 minutes. And they, in order to keep things a bit shorter and give us a bit more time for teaching, they have decided to remove 2 of the topics from the assessment. So that's the changes that we will see for this year, but we are still looking at the moment towards a full exam, and that's what we will be preparing the young people for. So these are really the assessment dates for this year. We'll be looking at our first block, which we are now well into working through, and we will look to be assessing that first block around the end of October, with 2 papers, a non-calculator paper and a calculator paper. We'll then have a prelim in January, in line with the whole school prelim calendar, and that will reflect the challenge of the actual exam with slightly less content, just what we've covered by that point. And then in March we'll have a second whole course prelim. These would be the assessments that, should anything happen that mean that the SQA and the Scottish Government decide that examinations are not going ahead, then these would be the assessments that we would be looking to use to finalise a mark for your young person. Now, to support them with that, we will also throughout the year, on a weekly basis, have some practice of exam style questions, okay, which we'll call low stakes assessments, and they're really just to give the young people practice at past paper style questions, and for us to see where they are having their difficulty with them. So for example, this week we looked at some work on straight line, and the young people were struggling with identifying which type of line they were supposed to be finding or understanding the definitions. So that's something that we now know we need to work on a little bit more with them over in the coming weeks. So those will take place each week, but they are not for really gathering evidence as these larger assessments would be. So that's something just to be aware of as we're working through. For the higher applications, it's a very different exam, and it consists of, first of all, a statistical project, and the young people are already at the point where they are working around that statistical project. It's worth 30 marks, and they're doing that in class and working on that at home at the moment, and that will be submitted and marked before the exam. So it's this kind of different way of working. It's submitted beforehand, so in the same way that perhaps your English folio would be. And then there is a exam paper, which this year will be worth 65 marks, so they have shortened that paper, but the paper takes place online, on a computer, rather than a written paper. So testing very different skills to those that we might have tested before. They will be using a statistical program and some spreadsheets in order to complete that particular assessment. Alright, so quite a different thing from us. And so we will again be doing some practice of those question papers as we come over the course of the year. Both in January and March, they will have a practice question paper. Before that, they will have a statistics assignment to do, the project to complete. This side of Christmas, we're looking at getting that done. And before the October holiday, they're looking at doing a statistics assessment, so a kind of assessment just on that block of work that they've covered as well. So what are we really looking for the young people? How are they going to make sure they do their very best? Well, the first thing we need to stress is if they're not sure, then ask for help. All right, ask in class, ask on Teams, send their teacher an email. All of these, and staff will get back to them and give them the assistance that they are needing. So if at home you're working with them and they're really struggling, then tell them to use those channels, to drop us an email, to put a message on Teams, come and see us in class, and we will give them the help that they need. Practice maths every evening at home. All right, they've got homework, but that's really the minimum they need to be doing. Okay, they need to be working on their maths continually if they want to really achieve this session. Make sure in class that they're listening, that they're using the notes. We give them printed notes for them to write examples on, but really good practice to highlight things that are important and to ask again if there's anything they're not sure. When we're working through exercises, all the solutions to those exercises are posted on Teams for them, and that's full written solutions, so they can go back and check their work. It's really important they do that. And if they're struggling with something, if they're not getting it right, that they're asking if they can't work out where they've gone wrong, so that we can make sure that we solve any problems that they have. Come to supported study. Supported study runs after school, or come up and get help at lunchtime, or if they prefer, even first thing in the morning. I tend to be in quite early, so any of the higher pupils are always welcome to come up and get some extra help before the start of the school day. Seek enrichment opportunities. Anything that is going on that might not just enrich their mathematics for this session, but enrich their opportunities when they move on. Things like the mathematical challenge, which are good things to be able to include in college and university application forms. So make the most of anything that is on offer to them. And again, just speak to your teacher if they need help or advice. That's what we're there for. And all of the 4 higher teachers for higher mathematics and the 2 for higher applications are more than happy to speak with your young person and give them as much help or advice as they require. Supported study, as I alluded to earlier, we run every week within the department. This year it's running Tuesday and Wednesday, and there are 2 National 5 sessions, 2 higher sessions each week. Advanced higher are more than welcome to pop in on sessions when Miss Robbins and I are taking them, but they are on offer each week, and we'd really encourage that your young person tries to attend at least one of those each week if they're finding that they are having difficulties. You will get a copy of this guide that we have to helping your child with higher mathematics, and that will be sent out by email tomorrow, and it just really gives you, it's almost like flashcards. So it has a question that you can ask them, and it gives you the answer there. So it's a really practical way of helping them to learn the information that they require for higher mathematics, and something that you could do with them as they work through the topics to continually make them think about, well, how do I find a perpendicular gradient? How do I find a composite function? And even if you don't understand some of the language that's there, then at least you'll be able to check whether they're getting the correct answer. And there's a lot of learning that needs to be done, and so that constant repetition is really helpful. And so that guide will be sent out to you all by email tomorrow. And I've said this already, but really the only way to learn mathematics is to do mathematics. And the young people need to be practicing these skills. It's all well and good to spend time in class learning them, but if they don't go home and continually practice how to do the different aspects of the course, then they will find this really challenging. And so some places they can get additional help. First of all, on our own REA's Maths website, it has been nicely organised by Mrs. Patterson by course, and so there are lots of links and practice papers on that website that they would be able to use to support them with their learning. Maths 180, particularly for our higher mathematics pupils, has some really nice videos on there to support them. And what is probably my favourite is the Dynamic Maths Question Bank. And because on there they can search for past paper topics by topic. And as they work through the course, they will be able to take individual aspects, and where they find they're having struggles, just look at questions on that topic, and the full marking schemes are there as well. So that's really helpful for young people as they are working on revision, and there are some higher applications questions on there as well. So a really good source of help for our young people. So I hope you found this really helpful to you and useful. And if there is anything that you want to know in addition to this, then please feel free to give me a contact at the school. Thank you for listening.
Hello, I am Mr. Rooney. I am the Faculty Leader of English and Media at Bryce High School. You're very welcome to this Higher English information session for year 21-22. I think one of the first things, one of the most important things that pupils notice about the English and Media faculty is that we aspire to three simple principles: rigour, aspiration and perseverance. We firmly believe within the faculty that if it's worth doing, then it's worth doing to the best of your ability. Always try to be the best version of yourself and never give up on yourself, because we certainly never will. All of these things we think are imperative if pupils are to be successful at any stage, but in particular in higher English. One of the things we're most proud of within the English and Media faculty is our fantastic history of strong academic results, exemplified, I suppose, last year in session 2021 by the results achieved by our higher pupils under what is arguably the most difficult educational circumstances that they would have ever faced. I'm obviously talking about the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact that that had on education. However, I previously mentioned that rigour, aspiration and perseverance, and that dedication that both the pupils and staff have here at Bryce. And you can see by the graph above that that hard work paid off, with 38% of the cohort achieving an A. The other statistic I would draw your attention to is only 11 pupils achieved a D last year. There were no awards. SQA have changed things, so now a D does carry SQA points. However, we obviously aim for the minimum of a C pass at higher. But I'm sure you will agree, a fantastic achievement by all the pupils last year. Taking a look at our current hires performance at National 5 last year, we can see they performed fantastically well under the circumstances. If you look at the graph above, 81% of our pupils achieved either an A or a B at National 5. This obviously lays a very strong foundation for them moving into the higher course this year. As we are now a few weeks into the higher course, I think that many pupils will have already considered in some sense the question that is currently on the screen. Is it going to be one day that I will start and fully engage and give 100% of my effort, or is today going to be day one where I'm going to tackle the higher course as I mean to go on? I think the best piece of advice that I can give for any candidate starting the higher course is that if you haven't already, you need to now apply yourself fully to all elements that are taking place both within the classroom and through the resources on Teams. This way, you will give yourself every opportunity to perform to your full potential in the SQA exams that are scheduled this year. In S5, there is more than one progression pathway as you enter into your choices for English. The majority of the pupils have chosen to go the traditional route of higher English. However, we also offer NC Communications and Literature course, which a small majority of pupils have taken up this year. I will come back to this later in the presentation, as it is a potential option for pupils that are struggling with the rigours of the higher course. The course structure for higher English mirrors the National 5 structure, but obviously there's a step up in complexity and in particular the level of analysis required. However, it still has the same three elements. REA paper, which is paper 1, that is worth 30% in the exam. The critical reading paper, which is paper 2, this is worth 40% and consists of an essay and set text, and a folio element, so external coursework, which is worth 30% of the exam. Now, as you can see, I've put in brackets there, usually every year there would be 2 essays required, but in response to the COVID pandemic, the SQA have removed the necessity for one of those essays. So instead of 2, there will only be 1 expected, and that essay will be worth 30%. I'll explain that in a little more detail when we get to the section on folio. Paper 1 is REA, and it will last for 1 hour and 30 minutes. REA stands for Reading for Understanding, Analysis and Evaluation. This paper will consist of questions that will ask the pupils about their understanding of the passage and what's going on, their analysis of language, and their evaluation of how well the writer has been at getting their point across. It will be worth 30% of the overall higher English result. When you open the paper, you'll see that you have 2 passages based on the same topic, but the 2 writers may have differing points of view. So they may agree or disagree on some of the points related to the topic. All of the questions bar 1 focus on passage 1. There is only one question, which will be the final question, worth 5 marks, that asks you to consider whether the writers agree or disagree on the points that they have made in the 2 passages. We always encourage pupils to answer in bullet point form, and each different type of question, understanding, analysis, evaluation, have different strategies in how to approach and answer the question. All of these are obviously taught throughout the year during lessons, more information of which can be found on the Teams page. The big difference between National 5 and higher at this stage and in this element is that there are no longer any marks awarded for quotes or references. The candidate must still go through that process of quoting and referencing. However, all marks are based now on the quality of analysis. Another big tip that we give to candidates is that to look at the number of marks available and to give at least 1 bullet point per mark in that answer. Paper 2 in the higher English exam is critical reading. It also lasts for 1 hour and 30 minutes unless you're entitled to additional time. This paper is worth 40% of your overall higher exam. It consists of 2 sections. The first section is set text, and the second section is the critical essay element. Candidates will spend roughly about 45 minutes on each section. Therefore, within this exam, time management is a key skill to utilise. Part 1 of Paper 2 is the Scottish set text. This is where candidates will be asked to analyse a piece of Scottish literature. This year at Bryce High School, all higher candidates will be studying either the poetry of Norman McCaig or Caroline Duffy. By the time the exam comes around, they will have studied a total of 6 poems for their chosen poet. For each of those poems, they will have detailed analysis and annotations. In the exam itself, the candidates will be given 1 poem. They must then answer questions that will analyse different aspects of the poem. The final question is the 10-mark question, and this has a very specific structure in how it should be answered. Every pupil will have detailed notes on this process. Once again, the big difference between National 5 and higher in this element is that pupils will no longer receive marks for simply quoting or referencing. All marks, once again, are based on the quality of their analysis. The second part of Paper 2 is the critical essay. In this section, pupils will be asked to answer 1 question on the text that they have studied throughout the year with their teacher. Throughout the year, they will study the text in detail. They will collect notes, annotations, and perhaps a quotation bank in order to prepare them for this element. In class, they will also look at model examples and will fully deconstruct the critical essay to ensure that they have a working knowledge of how to construct one in the exam. In the exam, candidates will have roughly 45 minutes to answer 1 question, and they must answer the question from the genre that they have studied. So, for example, if the class studied a play, then they must answer a question from the drama section. If it's a short story, then they must answer from the prose section. Time management is key in Paper 2, no more so when giving yourself enough time to write the critical essay. This is why we advise that throughout the year, candidates practice writing a critical essay under time conditions at home. They will be given time practice in class, but the more they do, the easier they will find it when it comes to exam conditions. Undoubtedly, the biggest change that the SQA have made to the higher course this year is the folio. Usually there would be 2 pieces submitted to the SQA worth 15% each, totaling 30, but this year pupils will only be required to submit 1 piece. It will still be worth 30%. It will be marked out of 15 and the mark will be doubled to give the pupil that mark out of 30. Obviously then this piece takes on a huge significance as it will be worth roughly 1/3 of the overall mark. Pupils can choose either a roughly discursive or persuasive genre or a creative/reflective genre to complete their essay. Teachers will of course help pupils plan and then give detailed feedback on at least one draft of the work. However, we must stress that the coursework needs to obviously be that of the pupil's work rather than a mixture. Also, we need to avoid instances of plagiarism, particularly when undertaking the discursive or persuasive piece. If you're in doubt, then ask your teacher. If you're copying large amounts of text from another source and you aren't giving it credit, well, unfortunately that is plagiarism, and there will be a dim view taken by both Braze and the SQA. The overall word count for the piece is 1,300 words, although there is a 10% limit allowed above that. However, we would advise to try and keep it within the 1,300 word limit set by the SQA. There is no minimum, but anything below 1,000 we feel would probably be self-penalising. There are lots of resources available to help pupils with the folio planning. If you're undertaking a discursive or persuasive piece, you might find it useful to type #FolioInspo into Twitter if you're struggling with ideas for your topic. At Brace High School, we're always mindful about taking on board the pupil voice. I think it's important here at this stage that you see some quotes from pupils that have gone through the higher process and want to offer some advice to pupils about to embark on that process. This pupil has clearly identified that they found the level of work or the amount of work needed to pass higher English was much greater than National 5. Interestingly, they also point out that there was a greater depth of understanding needed of the text at higher level. And that's what we find one of the most difficult things to get across, is that depth of knowledge and that depth of analysis needs to be increased as you move from National 5 to higher. It's probably one of the biggest hurdles that you'll face as you move into the higher course. I really like this pupil response because it sums up everything that we are about within the English and Media faculty. We do not expect pupils to get everything right first time around. That is simply unachievable. But what we do expect is that pupils try their best, and when they hit those barriers, they come and ask us for advice or for help in how to overcome the problem. The best thing they can do is have open lines of communication with their teacher to ensure that when they do hit something that is a little more difficult or a little bit trickier to pick apart, that the teacher is there at hand to help them through each stage of that process. Again, I think this is an incredibly insightful response from this pupil. Of course, at the end of the year, we want to see those just rewards for the effort that you put in and you reaching your full potential in terms of your higher English result. However, we are incredibly lucky due to the nature of our subject that we get to utilise skills and talk about other topics that have far-reaching effects beyond simply the English classroom. Utilising these skills will ultimately stand you in really good stead for when you enter your educational life after Brace and indeed your professional life. As stated previously, there is more than one progression pathway available to pupils at the end of National 5. At Brace, we also offer the NC Communications and Literature course. Some pupils have already decided to take this pathway in S5. This is a level 6 qualification and it is regarded as a higher C pass by many colleges and further educational establishments. The fundamental difference between this course and higher is that there is no end-of-year exam. Instead, units are assessed internally. Many of the same skills are practiced, and it is a good pathway towards higher, or indeed in lieu of higher. The reason I mention it at this stage is that through our tracking and parental communication, we may identify some pupils that are struggling to adapt to the rigours of higher. At this stage, we would offer a transfer to the NC Communication and Literature course instead of the higher course. We would obviously do this in full consultation with both parent and pupils. So we've seen everything that the pupils have to do throughout the year and how they can be successful in the higher course, but there are multiple ways that you can help your young person be successful through the higher English course this year. One of the most important skills for all subjects at Brace High School, never mind higher English, is reading. We would encourage reading for pleasure across the BGE and the senior phase because it will inevitably help candidates when they come to their examinations. But also, much more importantly, it is brilliant for things like their own mental health, for improving their vocabulary, for helping them understand complex ideas, and really inspiring their imaginations. There are multiple ways in which pupils can access literature, not just through the school library. Now that they have their iPads, they can also use apps like Kindle and BorrowBox. I can't stress enough how important it is that young people read throughout their educational journey at Brace High School and beyond, but it is never too late. Even if they are not an avid reader at the beginning of higher, I would actively encourage them to read small excerpts, maybe not start off with a novel, but perhaps a newspaper or a short story, something to get them invested in reading, as it will genuinely help them as they progress through the course. As you will have probably noticed during the recent pandemic, there are some fantastic pieces of inspirational media out there that you can now view with your young person. I'm thinking in particular if they have chosen a creative piece of writing, this would be a fantastic starting point to start to look at things like plot, characters, theme, conflict. But these will also feed into their major texts. It could be an enjoyable shared experience that you could be both actively involved in and may give you an opportunity to get invested in their learning this year. One of the best ways to prepare for the REA element of the exam is to get used to reading high quality newspaper articles. The articles that will be present in the exam are usually taken from publications like The Guardian. Therefore, it makes sense to get used to reading persuasive articles and discursive articles and start to think about how the writer is getting across their point of view or the techniques that are being used. Ask questions such as how successful the writer has been and have a genuine discussion to pick apart the article. You can do this in paper form or you can visit the publication's website. It genuinely is one of the best ways to get assimilated to the type of language and techniques that they will face in the exam. One of the easiest ways that you can help your young person this year is by simply taking an interest in their journey through the higher course. After watching this presentation, you should now be armed with all the information that you need to ask some supportive and perhaps even probing questions about how they're getting on with each section. It'll also give you a perfect opportunity to lend a helping hand if and when they need it. Another simple way to help your young person is through Teams. As you know, each pupil at Brace High School now has an iPad, which will hopefully mean they can access Teams both in school and at home. But this should also mean that you get to see their Teams page. Ask them to show you the general English page to see what notes their teacher has posted that day, or at the start of the week, or at the end. You could also ask to see the assignment section to see what work is coming up and what work has already been handed in. During this time, there will, of course, be pupils that are isolating due to health reasons. At this stage, or if this happens, teachers will, of course, upload the work that is being taken in the class and ensure, as best as possible, that pupils do not fall behind. This is also a way for pupils to communicate with teachers when they are not in the classroom. Please keep an eye out on our Twitter page where we will post information about important upcoming dates, links to websites that pupils might find useful, and where we often celebrate pupil success. I sincerely hope that you found this presentation useful, and I wanted to finish off by alerting you to some other resources that are available within the faculty. We have an open door policy within the faculty, and pupils can go and contact their teachers outside of class time if they need to speak to them. Also, there will be after-school revision sessions running in the faculty closer to exam time. Until then, there will be study support available every Wednesday after school from 3 to 4. Pupils also have access to Scholar, which is a fantastic device for revision purposes and to firm up their knowledge on key aspects of the course. They should ask their teacher if they are unsure how to access Scholar. You, of course, can keep up to date with us on Twitter. The Twitter handle is currently on the page. And if necessary, you can contact me at any stage through the email address listed below. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope that we all have a successful and positive year.
So that is the end of our presentations for this evening. I hope you found it useful or have taken a few nuggets. If you have any further questions, my email address is mark.rooney@falkirk.gov.uk.
And yes, as Mark has said, I hope you found this useful. As I've said in my presentation, there will be some further supports coming out to you by email in the coming days, and hopefully they will be useful to you. But again, if you want to get in touch, feel free to email me at the address that's on the screen there. Right, thank you again for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.